Mason City Schools community, on behalf of the Board of Education, welcome to the State of the Schools Address. What a year it's been. Unlike anything we've ever seen in our history in Comet Country. But thanks to you, we've persevered and made this year one to remember. We want to express our gratitude to all of our Comet families, our teachers, our administrators, our parents, our students, and everybody who's made this year a success. So on behalf of the Board of Education, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being the best Comets ever.
As we look back and reflect on this last year, we have learned so many lessons together as a community. One powerful lesson is just the power of community and what's possible when we come together to think about the possibilities in the future. One of the things we were able to do as a community is even though so many people questioned whether or not we could even open schools, and I even questioned it myself personally, is this possible? And then we started to talk about the possibilities, and we started to look at the safety procedures. And a couple of very specific examples is right from the beginning, our marching band, for example, started to ask questions: how can we continue to learn to live in this pandemic and to move forward for our students? And they built a beautiful plan that actually worked so well that we learned lessons from that. We looked at our sports and athletics before school started, and they put plans together to keep our athletes safe. And then we worked closely with our teachers and our staff and our community and our parents to talk about the options of choice and how can we create choice for not only our staff and our students, but for our families that met their needs as we were going through a very uncertain time. And so bringing community together taught us lessons about the power of community. The other thing that we learned through this time is that the things were uncertain. We didn't know where we were going. There wasn't a roadmap ahead of us. And so what we did was we went back to our firm foundation. We went back to our 3 rocks. That's our values. We talked about culture and how do we want our culture to look and feel, and how do we live through that this year. We talked about inclusive excellence and how do we make sure that we are living with the spirit of inclusive excellence throughout all of our decision makings as we move through difficult times. And we talked about not only personalized learning, but the personalized experience and how we serve our families and our students and our staff. And so those rocks gave us that firm foundation to continue to move forward. And it led us to all kinds of opportunities. One specific opportunity that made a huge difference was the advocacy we were able to do at the state level, and to work with Governor DeWine and his team specifically to bring in a test pilot for our students. We knew that quarantine was beginning to grow as a challenge for us, but we also had anecdotal data saying, students weren't getting sick, and so we had to solve that problem. So we went to Governor DeWine, we went to the medical experts, and we brought them together as a team, and we put together a test pilot, and that test pilot brought scientific data to the table that we could actually use to make decisions. And those decisions made ripple effects throughout the state of Ohio and the country, and allowing schools to understand how to open up safely. So we're so grateful, not just for all the things that happened at the beginning to get us moving forward, but what happened all the way through, the partnerships, the problem solving, the creativity and community coming together to do what most people thought was not possible, but to do the remarkable.
Over the course of the past year, our students, our staff, and our families have all engaged in learning and teaching in ways that would have been hard to imagine just even a little over a year ago. Last spring, all of our students and teachers were thrown into remote learning, mastering new technologies quickly, finding new ways to connect with each other. And our families, our parents, and other supportive caregivers too found themselves in new, highly important support roles at home to keep students learning. This school year, over 1/3 of our students remained learning fully online. And we are so proud of how these students have embraced the challenges and the great opportunities of learning in a virtual environment. We are grateful too for our staff, over 120 teachers and other support staff members who have embraced the great professional challenge of figuring out how to continue to offer high quality learning experiences for our students. And of course, for our families and our parents who provide extra levels of support when students are learning online. Our students who've been learning in person this year have also had a different kind of year, whether due to our in-school safety procedures this year or due to the impact of quarantines on their learning experience or their peers or their teachers. Through all of this change, our commitment to providing learning experiences that are grounded in our 3 rocks has remained the same. These are learning experiences that are meaningful, authentic, and rigorous. They're learning experiences that continue to put our student at the center of our decision making, that give students increasing levels of ownership of their learning and their academic pathways. We can see evidence of this commitment to these types of learning experiences through our programming. Whether we can look at our graduating class of 2020 with over 70% of those students taking 1 or more of our 27 advanced placement classes. Or our students in grades 1 through 5, all of whom experience a STEAM elective. Or our students at our middle school and high school who all have access to a wide array of elective offerings to allow them to pursue areas of interest and passion, whether in person or online. We see our commitment to these learning experiences that are meaningful, authentic, and rigorous in our students' outcomes as well. We can look at our incredible 61 students from our class of 2020 who were recognized by the National Merit Scholars Program, or our 21 students who earned a perfect ACT score, our 37 students who earned a biliteracy seal from the state of Ohio for demonstrating mastery in both English and a second language, or the over $9 million in scholarship funds earned by our class of 2020. These outcomes are important and impressive, and we take joy and pride in celebrating them. We also recognize that many of our students shine in ways that may not be officially recognized. We believe that each of our learners comes to us with unique strengths, gifts, and dreams, and it is our great honor and responsibility to create the classrooms and schools, the learning experiences that will help them to achieve those dreams. We are so proud and impressed with the achievements of each of our students and the ways that they have embraced learning during a pandemic. And we remain so grateful to our educators who have been so adaptable and committed to providing these quality learning experiences to our students in a most unusual year, and to our families who are always there to support along the way. All of us together, coming together to help our students achieve their dreams each day, every day.
So in March of 2020, there was this huge degree of uncertainty, and all of a sudden schools were closing. So we quickly deployed 1,200 devices to our families to make sure that they could learn at home, because we didn't really know what was going to happen next. We didn't know if we'd be back in 2 weeks or if we'd be back in a year. We just didn't know. So all we knew is that we needed to act quickly, and we needed to make sure the students had the resources that they need. And on the other side of it, we also knew that the staff needed to have different resources as well, because our environment was completely changing on a dime. So one of the things that we did was we bought screencasting software for all of our teachers, and that way they could record lessons, students could watch them on the devices that they had at home, and we could continue the learning process regardless of the environment that we were in. So it taught us a lot. In 2018, we started this culture work, and we learned some tools that helped us learn to adjust and adapt. And nothing was needed more in March than our adjusting and adapting skill set. So we were able to implement that, and our families and our staff did a remarkable job responding to the pandemic. And then as we started to prepare for the fall in August, we knew we could go remote at any time. The governor, we watched everything he was saying. We weren't exactly sure what everything was going to look like. So we continued, we decided we're on this one-to-one journey for good. So we went ahead one-to-one, and we also allowed all of the students to take the devices home. So instead of our March situation where we had to deploy them all because students were using them in the classroom, they were already taking them home. If we had to adjust, we could do it very quickly. So all of the actions that we took were enabling us to respond as quickly as we could based on what we had already learned in the spring. So through that, we also realized connection and all of the communication with our families was super important. So even in March, we developed a website because we had our regular website, but we realized there was pandemic-specific important information, and we needed to put a lot together. So we went ahead and created a new presence for our families to make sure that they had everything that they need, as well as connecting them to resources for our folks that had food insecurity or any of the other things. We wanted to make sure that everybody had what they need to make it through this pandemic. Once we had the hardware and software infrastructure in place, we began to turn our attention to the data and thinking about how are we going to open school in the fall. So we needed to know whether we were going to start in person, whether we were going to be in a hybrid environment, or whether we were going to be fully remote. So we chose to come and start in person, or we had families that chose online. But every day we started to build data points, and those data points made their way into this dashboard. And our dashboard told us whether or not we could stay in school, whether COVID was spreading in school, and then we were able to know on any given day if the variables were changing, if we needed to make a different decision. So ultimately we learned that we could stay in person for the entire year, but we were always ready. We monitored quarantines, we monitored isolations. We were able to look at our data points for sub-fill rates. So, and not just our teachers, but also our transportation department, whether kids could make it to school on their buses, as well as our child nutrition. Were we able to serve our families the food that they needed? So all of those things put together were actually in an operational risk index. So that was really what we used. We set thresholds for what we needed to have in order to go into one of these new environments, or whether or not we could stay. And the majority of the time, we were mostly green on almost all those variables, which meant stay in school. Anytime we had one of those minor variables change, it still told us, based on all of the variables, stay in school. And that's what we did. So what it taught us is the importance of data. And from here forward, data is going to play such a pivotal role. It helped us in the advocacy at the state level for us to be able to say, not only is COVID not spreading inside of our school, we were able to network with others to learn it's not spreading in any of the schools. So we were able to get quarantine rules changed, which even allowed our students to not go out in quarantine, that they were able to stay in person as they wished. So data will forever be telling additional stories at Mason City Schools.
3 years ago, Mason City Schools made an intentional investment in mental wellness. We could have never imagined how that investment would pay off during the pandemic. As a partner with Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, we have provided school-based therapists in each one of our buildings. This year alone, we have provided 150 new referrals to Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center school-based therapy. In addition, we have served approximately 350 students within the school environment. Our mental wellness team has conducted 69 risk assessments for students struggling with significant mental health concerns. We know that mental wellness is the foundation for all learning, and our team will be here to support your students beyond the pandemic.
Last March, when we learned our schools were going to be shutting down due to the pandemic, really at that time, we had nothing to look back at. Nothing in history had really ever had a situation where schools had been shut down. So not only were we shutting schools down, but we were curious as to when schools were going to reopen. So at that time, the operations department, our PR department, operations department, our HR department, our superintendent, we began meeting as a team endlessly to come up with plans based on the best science that was available to us at that time. As you can see in this room today, we have plexiglass barriers on all of our tables. We knew one of the things when kids would come to eat lunch, they would be unmasked. And this was one of the ways that we would be able to combat that. We also met with the custodial staff. We met with experts in electrostatic conditioning and cleaning with different surface disinfectant killers. We had a variety of those, looking at all of the CDC requirements to make sure not only those would potentially kill the virus, but also be safe for our students and staff. Our nutrition department, I can't say enough. The work that they did when they started this, they created a way for parents to order meals. In the rain, sleet, snow, whatever it was, those meals were delivered every single day. Sometimes upward almost 1,000 different people that was coming through. As far as transportation, you know, it's one of those things I almost get choked up thinking about it. I remember the day that we needed to deliver meals to some of our staff as they didn't have cars to get here or their families had already gotten sick from COVID-19. And we were able to ask for volunteers in our transportation department, and it was those veterans who stood up and said, "We've served Mason for years. We want to be there for these kids and make sure they get the nourishment that they need." They worked in tandem with our nutrition department and delivered meals the entire time that the kids were out of school. And then at the end of the year, when it come time for graduation, the transportation department, along with Ms. Carson and the PR department, were able to develop what we call the diploma drop to make sure that those emotional ties were there and that kids were able to enjoy graduation through a diploma drop. It was really one of the coolest things I've seen in 25 years of education. With that said, now we're a year into this. We're back in school, things are going well. Our staff is staying healthy, our kids are staying healthy, and our kids have been in session in person the entire time, and we're grateful for that.
I wanted to provide a few updates on the district's finances. 2020 obviously was a crazy year in a lot of ways, and it did impact us financially as well. And so to look at a couple of things specifically, we saw great impacts on our expenses and our revenues. Overall, we're seeing a negative financial impact of about $3 million from COVID to date. But one of the good things is that we've seen a lot of support from our community over the last year. In 2020, the community in a big way responded to our operating tax levy increase. And so we greatly appreciate that support, and that's really helped solidify the district's financial position. As a reminder, in that levy, we did commit to making that last 5 years. We are 1 year into our 5-year commitment, and we do remain steadfast in our commitment to make sure that does last 5 years, even in spite of what we've seen from the impacts of COVID. Also, as a reminder, that levy was going to increase taxes by about $14, less than $14 per month for $100,000 of home value. And we've looked at a sampling of property tax bills, and we do see that coming through in effect, that it was less than $14 per month, and a total increase of between 8 and 9% on property tax bills. Fiscal stewardship is one of the bedrock things that's really important to us here at Mason City Schools. And through the pandemic, we did see a financial impact on us, but we do continually monitor our finances in every way. We look for opportunities to reduce expenses and make sure that we're providing the best value we can for our taxpayers. And that's true in the pandemic and also true going forward as well. Something that we will continue to do year after year into the future. If you ever have any questions about district finances, please feel to reach out to our fiscal office. I'm happy to help in any way.
Here's what we know and what we believe to be true about next school year. What we know is that we will continue to have a posture to open up, to make sure that we are open for all students and all learners. We also have learned lots of lessons that are preparing us for next year. We've learned lessons about how to keep students safe this year. We've learned lessons about how to use our data effectively to make decisions. And one of the things that we will continue to do is to be true to our values, working closely with our community in decision making. Also working with our health experts to make sure that we're monitoring and making sure that we're safe as we open up next year, like we did this year. We've also learned lessons about sustainability. We know some of the things that we did this year will continue to carry forward. We opened up and we experimented with online learning, for example. We also learned some lessons with that we understand that may not be sustainable, so that we will make sure whatever we do is something that we can carry on and do with Mason quality. We are so grateful to the state of Ohio for putting educators at the front of the line for vaccinations. We don't take that for granted. We are so grateful. And we're grateful because not only does it keep our community safe, but it also allows us to have confidence and hope for the opening of next year, bringing our staff together and being whole again so that we can open up with the most normal feel, the thing that we've all been craving for so long, to be able to open up and to have our kids come back to us for that learning environment that we all refer to as that Mason quality experience.
One of the key ingredients to Mason City Schools' success for many years has been our ongoing commitment to transparently telling our students, staff, and families what we know when we know it, and gathering feedback to make decisions. Prior to the pandemic, we've had community conversations in people's homes that helped inform our 3 big rocks that Superintendent Jonathan Cooper has talked so much about and that now infuse our whole district's values. As we move forward into the future, we know that we want to get back to being where we can be in person and have those kinds of conversations together. But we also have learned that there are other ways to leverage our community's thoughts and ideas. Today, we're launching a new way to gather feedback that is more inclusive and allows us to crowdsource all of your best ideas. As we think about moving not just for next year, but into the future, we're using a platform called ThoughtExchange. So when you finish looking at this video, go check on the link and give us your thoughts about what are your hopes for next school year and what are your dreams for going into the future.
We know what happens when we come together as a community. We've seen that over this last year. The possibilities are endless. And so as we look forward, not just for next year, but on to 2030, we are launching an effort to bring your voices to the table, to get your ideas, to tap into your creativity so that we can begin the journey to 2030. So as you have opportunities to lean into that, to give us your dreams, the possibilities for Mason City Schools, please do so, because your voice in this process is essential to our success.